Cool. All right. So that's a big feature in it, is that we talked about Russia's foreign policy ambitions. And yesterday we were using this idea about the Roadrunner and the Coyote, and how the Coyote, every time he kind of got smacked around, he would go to the Acme Company, and the Acme Company would deliver a package, and then he would have some new method of trying to get after the Roadrunner. Now, in the analogy, what is the Roadrunner for Russia? Yes, the Mediterranean, the Turkish Straits. What is the latest Acme package?
The Slavic, nationalism?
Right. Slavic Big Brother, as it's going to be known. That's the mantra that they're going to take on in the second half of the 19th century. The goal remains the goal. We want access to a warm water port. We want access to the Turkish Straits. We see our capacity to influence the Balkans and the future of the Balkans as a method in which we can get there. Okay, so keep that in mind. That's ultimately going to get us to the place where the Balkan powder keg thing happens. All right, but then there's another feature that kind of brings in the remainder of the people or the actors. And part of that is the Tale of Two Germanys. So we're going to look at that next. Okay, when we talk about two Germanys, we are referring to Bismarckian Germany, where Otto von Bismarck is the chancellor. That is 1871 to 1890. And then what we call Wilhelmian or Boneheadium. Boneheadium? Yeah. Boneheadium. Okay, which is the second half of Germany, 1890 to 1914. So Kaiser Wilhelm II guides that 24-year period. Bismarck guides the first 19-year period. Bismarck is doing everything in his power, essentially, to try to keep Europe at peace during this time. Okay? Remember what I also talked about yesterday, that if Russia's Acme package is that they want to become Slavic Big Brother and influence Balkan nationalism, and that Serbia is kind of like front and center on the effort to try to unite all the Slavs together, and that Russia is going to be Slavic Big Brother, then that's going to put them diametrically at odds with Austria-Hungary. And that's weird, because Russia, Austria-Hungary, and Germany have been in alliances together since the days of Napoleon. Remember, it was called the Holy Alliance. But the Habsburg Empire, the Hohenzollern Empire, the Romanov Empire came together and basically said, you know, there's something that we all have in common, and we work together. All right? But Austria-Hungary, who fears Serbian nationalism or Balkan nationalism, is going to be at odds with Russia, who is instigating Balkan nationalism. And Germany knows it. And Bismarck, remember, is playing about 3 or 4 checkers ahead of everybody else. And he sees that on the wall, that Russia and Austria-Hungary are going to be in a spot where they're going to come to confrontation. We got to figure out a way to deal with it. And that's why Bismarck immediately goes into what's called the Three Emperors League, or Dreikaiserbund. It was sort of like, remember the Holy Alliance, remember that we're friends. But Austria-Hungary, Russia, Germany, Franz Joseph, Tsar Alexander, Kaiser Wilhelm, these are old school conservatives. This is a move on Bismarck's part to keep everybody in dialogue. Remember, his primary objective is to keep everybody at peace, keep France isolated. And I even told you yesterday that my theory is that if he had his way, he probably would have figured out a way to make nice with France. But that's impossible. France wants revenge. France was humiliated. And as long as that's true, we do 2 things to France. One, we isolate them, and we have all the pals, and we keep all those friends away from them. All right? Immediately, here's how it gets tested. Okay? This Balkan nationalism is a thing. It's not going away. As long as you have Bulgarias and Romanias and Macedonias and Albanias and everything else, and they are under Ottoman control or under somebody else's control, they are pining to get some kind of self-determination, some kind of independence, some type of autonomy. All right, so that starts. 1877 to 78 is the beginning of this. It's called the Russo-Turkish War, And the motives for everyone are pretty obvious. The motive for the Balkans is independence. All right. The motive for Austria-Hungary is, uh-oh. I don't know if that's a motive. That's more or less a reaction. The motive for Russia is, let's get in on this. And that they put their little Slavic Big Brother shirt on and said, we'll help you. Because if you get what you want, Bulgaria gets its independence, Romania gets its independence or whatever, you're going to remember that Big Brother helped you get it, and you might be able to hook us up with some Turkish straits. Does everybody understand how that plays out? Against the Turks, having Balkan nationalism combined with Russian military power against the Turks is not going to be that hard a fight. The Turks will capitulate, and the Balkan region looks like it's going to get liberated. They meet at a treaty called San Stefano, okay? And I want to show you what these maps look like. So if you look at in the background here, you can kind of see what that looks like. All right, does everybody see the colored boundary? Okay? The original colored boundary that you see, ignore the stripes and everything else, is what the original treaty was going to give. Okay? That means when you created Bulgaria, you got your Romania now, you got Bulgaria, but the original boundaries for Bulgaria were going to go all the way down to the Aegean Sea. All right? Russia ends up getting some territory up here, Serbia ended up getting some territory there, and then everybody lost their minds. Britain especially. Remember, Britain is still in that mode where Russia getting access to things that scare Britain, Britain's going to backlash. The fact that the Balkans is expanding and nationalism is expanding is going to make Austria-Hungary fearful. The fact that Russia was able to gain any kind of territory or influence upsets the balance of power. So Austria-Hungary's like, well, what's in it for us? Bismarck does what Bismarck does. Okay? Which is, everybody chill out, everybody come to Berlin, we'll sit down, we'll get it figured out. There's two Berlin treaties. One's in 1878, one's in 1885. This one is going to deal with this problem, this Balkan problem. The 1885 one was going to deal with the scramble for Africa. Remember the starter's pistol. Everybody calm, we'll have some schnitzel, we'll figure it out, we'll set some rules for the game. This one is, everybody's upset about San Stefano. Sit down, we'll figure it out. Okay, you know, Tatalia, what, you know, so that kind of thing. So, they meet at the end, Austria-Hungary, Russia's there, you know, everybody else, and they end up changing it. All right? They end up making some revisions, and what they ended up making was these stripedy stripes that you see here. Okay? They ended up taking this boundary back. All of this stuff in the stripes, they gave it back to the Ottoman Empire. The reason why is, look at it. Territorially, it's a nice, easy, deny access to the Russians or any of their allies against the Turks. We keep territorial integrity, at least as it applies to the sea lanes. All right? Then they created a buffer state called East Rumelia. That was taken directly away from the Bulgarians. Okay? Then they modified the boundary. They ended up compensating Serbia a little bit, but did not give them nearly what Serbia wanted. But here's the part that got really weird. Because Austria-Hungary was fearful of the fact that balance of power was upset, and they're really concerned about Serbia on their border now, that they took this territory over here and got protectorship rights over it. And this was an area that was full of about 1 million Slavs. It's called Bosnia-Herzegovina. Okay? And that's a territory that Serbia had its eyes on. And when they have a vision of reuniting all the Slavs together in one state, it definitely would have included Bosnia and Herzegovina. So they hate Austria-Hungary anyway, because there's a whole bunch of subject nationalities that identify as ethnic Slavs that are under Austria-Hungary's control. Now you just ceded another 1 million and a whole bunch of more territory. Okay? So Serbia is walking away from this probably more upset than everybody else. They're like, this was a play for emancipation and for Balkan nationalism. And all these big actors came in, modified and whittled away the boundaries, and everybody walks away unhappy. Russia walks away unhappy because they don't have access to the straits. Bulgaria walks away unhappy because they lost about a third of what they thought they had. The Serbs lost about a third of what they had. And the Austrians gained in the process. So Slavic Big Brother has stepped up. Then a treaty has ended up refuting everything that Slavic Big Brother supposedly pretended to help with. So the Serbs are looking at Russia like, and Russia's going, what are we supposed to do? Keep that in mind. Okay? When we just explained, what did Bismarck do? What was their alliance system that he created in order to try to keep Austria-Hungary and Russia in the same dialogue? The Three Emperors League, called Der Kaiserbund. Now he knows at 1878 that that's an impossibility. Okay? Because how is Russia going to be able to explain that they are Slavic Big Brother to Serbia and maintain an alliance with Austria-Hungary? How's that going to happen? And Bismarck knows it. So what Bismarck says is, okay, all right, I got this. All right, let me think for a second. And eventually Bismarck starts to put together a patchwork of alliances to deal with it. Okay? Making lemonade out of poo is what Bismarck is doing. The first thing is this. In case Russia starts to act emotionally at the end of the Congress of Berlin and might think to attack, okay, he immediately signs an agreement with Austria-Hungary. Instead of it being a league or an entente or whatever, it's an alliance. It's called the Dual Alliance. It's formed in 1879, almost immediately. An alliance says if you hit them, you hit both of us. All right, and I, by obligation of the alliance, means that I will involve myself in military affairs if anything happens to you. That's an insurance policy for Austria-Hungary. All right, but it's also a wink to Russia to say, chillax. Okay? It's also a wink to Serbia and others to say, chillax. Okay? Remember Italy yesterday. What did we call them? Little brother. All right? And so Bismarck is the biggest, baddest dude on the planet right now. He's just signed an alliance with Austria-Hungary, and Italy's like, we want to be in an alliance. We want to be in an alliance. They get to be in an alliance. We want to hike. We want to do something. And everybody's looking at him like, all right. Is Italy, everybody cool with Italy being in the alliance? Austria-Hungary's like, yeah, all right. So Italy joins the alliance, and now we have the Triple Alliance. Okay, Italy, Austria-Hungary, and Germany are now in a military alliance. Okay? All right. So that is where we're at. And Bismarck is just like, remember when I was saying, like, Serbia's kind of like this, and Russia's kind of like this? Bismarck's like, all right. And unfortunately, the next major turning point in this story is Wilhelm I dies and is replaced by Wilhelm II. And Wilhelm II is not Wilhelm I. And the adversarial relationship that exists between Bismarck and Wilhelm is going to get settled by Bismarck losing his job. Okay, and that is an unfortunate thing. There's a bunch of reasons why that was the case. All right, the big one was ideological. Remember what I told you is that Bismarck is a practitioner of what they call realpolitik. What does that mean?
It's like effective decisions.
What did Bismarck do after Germany united? What was his next move? He's like, damn, that was easy. He stopped. He stopped. He said, that's enough. He's like, I recognize the landscape. I understand that the only state that can really hurt us is Britain. Okay? Britain is the only state that's really powerful enough that if we engaged with them, there would be trouble. Right now, we got France isolated. Right now, we've got partnerships with everybody else. If I start racing around the world competing where the British compete, I am competing in their sphere of influence. If I do that, they're antagonized. Right now, they're isolationist. Okay? Right now, France is isolated. The last thing that we would ever want is some reason for Britain and France to get together. Okay? Britain and France were together, but if they were ever together in anything on foreign policy, it was to check Russia. Okay? So he sees that. Wilhelm II does not see the world that way. So if Bismarck is a practitioner of realpolitik, Wilhelm is a practitioner of what they call Weltpolitik, or world politics. He sees Germany in context that says, if Germany is not competing on the world stage, then Germany will not be a world power. Okay? Bismarck's like, we're just fine where we're at. And he says, no, we need to be more ambitious than that. If other people have a navy, we have a navy. If other people are competing for colonies, we're competing for colonies. If other people are expanding their foreign policy, we're expanding our foreign policy. All right? And that is primarily the reason why Bismarck was let go. Second thing is that the emperor doesn't want to be second fiddle to one of his ministers. All right, that's not a role that he wanted to play. He wanted to make the decisions. All right. And then the third thing was more of a domestic thing. But remember, Bismarck, if those of you that did the DBQ, Bismarck had some hang-ups with social democrats and groups like that. And so part of it was the idea that, well, if Bismarck is the enemy of the social democrats, if I let him go, we might be able to find some common ground. So the pilot gets dropped. That's what it's referred to historically. Okay? And then a series of boneheaded moves. But the first boneheaded move was you got rid of probably the best military or foreign policy tactician in modern history. All right, you got rid of some serious talent. All right, and they needed him, at least for no other reason but for that role. He was the adult in the room, and they got rid of him. The second thing is, he refuses to... Oh, did I explain that? I didn't. The last thing that Bismarck did, I apologize, was that recognizing that the Three Emperors League was shot. All right, remember, that's what the Three Emperors League looks like. Austria-Hungary, here's Germany, here's Russia. That's Der Kaiserbund. Okay? There's no way that Austria-Hungary and Russia can be in that relationship, because Austria-Hungary is threatened by Serbia, and Russia is supposedly like big brother to Serbia. Okay? So he formed the military alliance with Austria-Hungary to chill out Russia. But then the other thing that he did in 1887 was he signed a treaty with Russia. So instead of having a triangle, we just have two solid lines. One from Germany to Russia, and one from Germany to Austria-Hungary. And this one says, we're allied with you unless you attack them. And then the other says, we're allied with you unless you attack them. And then the idea was, you guys may not like each other, but if you like your relationship with me, you all will not be aggressive towards one another. And that was the best that he could do. Okay? It's called the Reinsurance Treaty. All right? Homeboy lets the Reinsurance Treaty lapse in 1890. Okay? Refuses to renew it. Says it's too much, it's too big a job, you know, to have to support Russia and Austria-Hungary. It doesn't make a lot of sense geographically. Whatever the case is, we're just going to stick with our partner Austria-Hungary. The heck with it. All right? Next thing that he does is this is part of really just where intellectuals were at the time, but there's a really groundbreaking work that comes out called The Influence of Sea Power in History. Admiral Alfred T. Mahan. All right? And there's no doubt that the Germans were reading it. There's no doubt that Teddy Roosevelt was reading it and others. And the point of the work was that any great empire throughout history has one thing in common. They have a great navy. All right? Go back to the Phoenicians or whoever it is. But the people that have shaped the arc of world history, those great powers have been naval powers. And so Germany takes away from that. If Germany wants to be a great power, they must have a navy. All right? And they go on a rapid build to try to build this amazing navy. Who does that threaten? Of course it does. And it creates an arms race, a scary arms race between the Germans and the British. And it creates a relationship that went from being friendly to adversarial. It went from being friendly to distrustful. All right, he poked the wrong bear. You don't dunk on LeBron and then stand over him and wag your finger at him. Well, that's what he did. He dunked on LeBron. You don't dunk on LeBron. All right, well, maybe you do. I don't know. Colonialism and imperialism, this is all part of it. Remember that if you're Weltpolitik, you play in the places where the world players play. And that means if we're going to go for colonial acquisition, we're going to be there. If it's Africa, we're going to be there. If it's Chinese markets, we're going to be there. And now Germany is showing up in all of the venues that Britain used to control kind of by themselves. Right? And then it was just like petty. It was almost like Twitter wars or beefs. Like one of them the other day, we were talking about the Boer War. And how there was this Jameson raid and how Britain eventually kind of got into it with the descendants of the Dutch that we call the Boers in that region called Cape Colony. All right? Well, when the Jameson raid happened and Paul Kruger, the leader of the Boer republics, got into it, with the British, guess who comes to Paul Kruger's aid? Guess who's speaking out in all the newspapers, like chopping down Britain? Kaiser Wilhelm. It makes no sense. Not to mention the fact that, most of these people are related. That's the other thing. There's like they have weddings in Europe, like at the turn of the century. It's like Russia, Germany, Britain. They're all relatives. Somewhere, you're basically, knocking your cousins. All right? But, so that's what's going on. It's like everything, like if you were to read a book, like how could we upset Britain in like 30 days or less? Like he read like every word of it. All right? And that's what you get. And as a result, you literally took a situation where Bismarck had a patchwork of alliances that worked for him, kept France isolated, kept friendly relationships with Britain, kept different spheres of influence, and in the space of like 5 years, he had completely shifted that landscape. As soon as the Reinsurance Treaty lapses, guess what happens? France shows up in Russia. France is like, we have no friends. Would you like to be friends? And Russia's like, yeah. We'd like to be friends. It's like it was impossible to imagine that the country that was invaded by Napoleon is now friends, with the country that had Napoleon. It's crazy what's going on. Like he's almost like Wilhelm's like, yeah, I did some boneheaded things, maybe. But there's no way that Britain would ever become friends with France. My God. Half of their statues are like devoted to defeating Napoleon. 1894, Franco-Russian alliance. Okay? Now Italy's kind of sniffing around. It's like, maybe I'm on the wrong team. I don't know yet. We'll see. Britain, since the fall of Napoleon, has basically dedicated themselves to splendid isolationism. We're not entangling ourselves in alliances. We don't care. Now, all of a sudden, in the space of like 5 years, they signed a pact with Japan. That was more about Russia. Then they signed a pact with France called the Entente Cordiale. Then the unbelievable happens. They sign a pact with Russia. Okay? So it goes Anglo-Japanese pact to Entente Cordiale to Anglo-Russian Entente to Triple Entente. This all happens in 6 years. And now Germany's looking back and they're like, oh, damn, that kind of got away from us. It was like the fight that they had in Anchorman when they're all sitting around after like the news anchors had like thrown down. That escalated in a hurry. And it did. So now Wilhelm is almost in disbelief that he could create that much damage that fast. So now he wants to test it. He's like, come on, man. Russia and France are pals and Britain and France are pals. There's no way that could be true. So they decide to litmus test it. And they go to Morocco. Now remember, Morocco is like that's what France covets in terms of its African empire. They wanted Morocco. Part of the reason why they ended up signing an agreement with Britain in the first place is because they were fighting with Britain in East Africa, and they eventually made a settlement and said, Britain, will you support us in Morocco? And Britain's like, yeah, sure. Faux show. After Fashoda. It was like, faux show. But that's it. I mean, like everybody knows that France wants Morocco. So Germany shows up. And it's just Wilhelm's way of kind of saying, let's see. Would everybody really support France, or is it just kind of like something they're saying? And so it's sort of like, you know, France is like, yeah, we are in Morocco, you know, and then Germany's like eating an apple, like, yeah, we want Morocco too. France is like, this is terrible. We know, you know, so they're kind of fighting it out. And they're like, well, let's have a conference. See what everybody thinks about it. It's called the Algeciras Conference. All right. And the belief was like Russia was involved in this Russo-Japanese war, and there's all these other things that are going on. You know, maybe they won't pay attention to this. So Germany's testing the waters of these newfound agreements between these powers that seem, it's almost like inexplicable that they would be together. And Algeciras proves that they're together. The only state that really supports Germany's like claims over Morocco is Austria-Hungary. So now they realize that their one pal is Austria-Hungary. That's it. Everybody else sides with France. All right. 30 years of what Bismarck did is gone. Okay. Yesterday I told you we went from Balkans to Bonehead to Balkans to Bonehead. Now that we looked at Bonehead, we're going back to Balkans. What happens in 1908 is the next part of this story, and it's so cute. Okay, it's called the Buchlau Agreement. So, of all the people that you would expect to not talk to one another, Austria-Hungary and Russia have a meeting. It's a secret meeting. So you can imagine them sitting in the back porch, having some lemonade. Like, man, the good old days. Remember the Holy Alliance? Yeah, that was awesome. Russia, Prussia, Austria. We were like Wonder Twins, man. It was the best. Wonder Triplets. It's like, yeah, and then Der Kaiserbund, remember that? 3 emperors. You're an emperor. I'm an, you know. Oh, great days. It's like, where did it all go so wrong for us? It's like, oh, yeah, no, the Balkans. It's like, wouldn't it be great if we were friends again? It's like, yeah, this is really sad. So the belief was, they're kind of like, well, Austria, so Russia's like, what do you want? What if you could have anything right now, what is it that you would want? And they're like, well, if we're being honest with you, Russia, we're really nervous about Serbian aggression. And I'm like, yeah, the Serbs, there's something. What if we took Bosnia-Herzegovina? Just like, I know we have a sort of like pseudo-protectorship rights over them right now, but let's just say we annex them. Would you guys support that? And the Russians were like, yeah, I think we could do that. Like, it's amazing that this is happening. And then Austria-Hungary's like, whoa, what do you guys want, Russia? And Russia's like, really? Oh, yeah, the Turkish Straits thing. Yeah, all right, right. Okay, here's what we do. We're going to move into Bosnia, and when we move into Bosnia, you move into the Straits. Ready? On your mark, get set, go. And then Austria moves into Bosnia, and then Russia starts moving towards the Straits, and then everybody's like, whoa, Russia, what are you doing? And Austria-Hungary's like, yeah, Russia, what are you doing? And they occupied Bosnia. Russia couldn't get to the Straits. Russia's like somebody that just got caught like eating, I don't know, chocolate out of the refrigerator. Like, because Serbia is looking and going, yeah, Russia, what are you doing? And what is Russia going to say? So, yeah, behind your back, little brother, we met with your enemy. And we basically sold out 1 million Slavs. Sorry about that. So now Serbia has to eat this sandwich again. All right, Russia, again, is embarrassed. Okay, now Austria has full control over Bosnia-Herzegovina. Russia gets nothing, and now everybody's on edge. All right, back to the bonehead. Remember what I said before, that he was using Morocco as like a litmus test to see if the alliances were really strong. 5 years later, he's still not convinced that the alliances are real. So this time he's like, all right, yeah, anybody can show up at a conference and vote. All right, but if we did something military that threatened France, would anybody militarily support them? So they stationed a gunship outside the coast of Morocco aimed at France. And they said, all right, let's see what happens. There's no way that the British Navy is going to like aggressively charge us. And then the British Navy aggressively charged them. And they're like, all right, okay, we get it. So they come up with some diplomatic way of like settling it. But the reality is that like Germany did something. They tried to bluff, and Britain called the bluff. All right, back to the Balkan powder keg. And the weird part about this one is that Italy, who was 0-1 or so in Africa, remember when everybody was scrambled around in Africa, and Italy was defeated by the Ethiopians? Well, Italy went to war against the Turks over Libya and won. So, like, Italy won. And the states in the Balkans were like, we don't need Russia to beat the Turks. The freaking Italians just beat the Turks. All right? And so they were like, we'll just form our own league. We'll rise up. We'll gain all the territory that we want to gain. We don't need Russia to be involved in it at all. And so the Balkan League fights against Turkey and wins. Okay? And then they end up getting that access to the straits, like some of those lands. They kind of grab it for themselves without Russia. All right? But again, exactly like the last one went down, the big powers intervened against the Balkans and started modifying and whittling the boundaries down again. And Russia's standing by and they're like, nothing we can do about it. And Serbs like, you know what? You suck as a big brother. You're like the worst. All right, Austria-Hungary, you know, and not only that, because Serbs were so aggressive, they ended up, and they gained some territory, but they ended up taking it away from them. And the territory that they took was a geographical boundary that would have given Serbs access to the Adriatic Sea. And instead of allowing the Serbs to have access to the Adriatic Sea, they cut it off by creating Albania. All right? So you have to look at it on a map, but Serbs ended up gaining territory, then lost territory. They're looking at Russia. Russia's doing this, okay, and now they've lost again. The Second Balkan War is a joke because it's like the Serbs were so upset that they lost territory that instead of punching Russia, they punched Bulgaria, which makes no sense. All right, it would be like, I don't know, Alicia's in a fight with Katie and... you know, they're battling it out, and Alicia's so upset, you know, she just hits Mac. And Mac was like he was just having a sandwich, like minding his own business. And Alicia's like, I'm so pissed at Katie right now, Mac! And then she punches Mac. And Mac's like, so Bulgaria is kind of like, dude, what do we do? So now Bulgaria ends up losing territory as a result of the Second Balkan War. Okay? The Third Balkan War, is World War I. Okay? So, let's take a little bit of a look at it. But do you guys remember when I said that the Austrian-Hungarian Empire took Bosnia? So the fight was, not a fight, but it was that the Archduke, the guy that was about to become, you know, like the Emperor of Austria-Hungary, went on a little public relations tour, like, welcome to the neighborhood. So they went to the capital of Bosnia called Sarajevo, and it's like, yeah, let's have a parade. I'd like to meet you guys. And the Serbs are like, yeah, come. Do that. We'll see what happens. And so the Serbian nationalist organization, the Black Hand, is the ones that met Ferdinand there. And it was kind of like a JFK and Jackie kind of thing with the, you know, the crop top. You know, we'll go through the parade, we'll wave at people, and then, you know, people with bombs and guns are going to be waiting for them. And eventually they assassinated the Archduke. That is like literally triple alliance, triple entente. They had already chosen the teams. You're waiting for the ref to grab the ball and throw it up. Okay? So The ref throwing the ball up in the air is literally like the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand. Okay, now the question is, let's see what ends up happening with the rest of this. Right. Have you all seen this before?
That's the bar fight.
This is the bar fight. If World War I was a bar fight. So here's how it starts. It says Germany, Austria, and Italy are standing together in the middle of a pub. Why are they standing together in the middle of a pub? Because that's the Triple Alliance. Yeah, they're bros right now. Okay? When Serbia bumps into Austria and spills its pint. That's the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand. So they're hanging out at the bar. Serbia's like, hey, sorry. And then they run into him. Okay? Austria demands Serbia buy it a whole new suit because of the new beer stains on his trouser. So the argument is that Serbia presented an ultimatum Austria-Hungary presents an ultimatum to Serbia that's way disproportionate to what supposedly happened. Remember, this is a nationalist organization called the Black Hand. Serbia may or may not have known about it, but they definitely, it's not like the Serbian army assassinated, Archduke Ferdinand. So Austria's like, we want this, and Serbia's like, we didn't have anything to do with it. We're going to investigate it. I'm sorry. And they're like, you have like 15 minutes, or otherwise we're invading you. Okay, and that's kind of how it was. It says Germany, so they bump into them, they spill beer. Austria's like, I want a whole new suit. Serbia's like, what? And then Germany's like, yeah, give them a new suit. And that's what, in history, that's what's called the blank check. Like Austria's like, we might want to throw down with Serbia, will you support us? And Germany's like, yes. It's called the Bethmann-Hollweg Memorandum. But essentially, yeah, Austria-Hungary, if you want to jack up Serbia, we got you. Right? Germany expresses its support for Austria's point of view. On the so now Britain, which was sitting on the other side of the bar, comes over. They're like, hey, what's going on over here? Everybody just chill out. All right, and then they're looking at Britain like, what are you doing over here? Serbia points out, and Serbia's trying to speak for itself. They're like, we can't afford a whole suit. What you're asking from us, we can't do. But we are willing to pay for the trousers to get dry cleaned. Okay? And that seems reasonable. Okay? So Russia, who's now, was kind of in the bar. They were kind of near Serbia. They were playing pool a little bit, but now they're standing next to Serbia. It's like now, for the fourth time, Russia could become Slavic Big Brother. Now they decide they'll be Slavic Big Brother. And they're standing next to Serbia now, and they're like, Serbia's made a pretty good response to your demand. What are you guys going to do? And so everybody's waiting. Austria asks Serbia who they're looking at, which is what you say at bars. What are you looking at? Huh? You want to throw down? Is that what you're doing? Russia suggests that Austria should leave its little brother alone. Remember, Slavic Big Brother? Hey, you leave them alone, or we'll have something to say about it. You watch. Austria looks at Russia and says, you in what army? Because that's another thing that you say in bar fights. It's like, I see you. Who else is going to be in this fight? Because if it's just you, we're going to rock that. All right. Austria inquires as to whose army will assist Russia in doing so. Germany now is sort of distracted. They've been kind of hanging out watching this Russia, Serbia, Austria-Hungary thing, but now they're looking over at Britain. It says, we notice that France is looking at us. What's that about? And it's like a whole different part of the bar. So Germany's kind of like, oh, all right, so, the trousers, what are we doing about this? And then they're like, all of a sudden, it's like, France is looking at us. Now remember, if you're France, you most likely ran into Germany in a bar about 3 months ago, and they spilled a whole damn pitcher on you. So France had not forgotten about that. And maybe France noticed that Germany was in the bar, right? And France probably had one of those looks like, you took Alsace-Lorraine, spilled a pitcher on me. And Germany noticed that they were looking at him, and they're looking at Britain because Britain was kind of near them. Remember, they're friends now, so they met out at the bar. They're looking at Britain, like, why is France looking at us? And what's going on over there? Britain says, France can look at whoever they want to. And Britain said, oh, and by the way, we're looking at you too. Okay? And then they say, what are you going to do about it, Germany? And then they look at each other again, and then they notice that Germany's eyes are looking somewhere else. They're like, why are you looking at Belgium? And Belgium's like, Belgium was just sitting there just like eating a taco or something. Like, huh? It's like, yeah, man, they're looking at you. Germany's like, okay, that's enough. So here's how it goes down. All right. There's somehow Turkey gets involved. All right. Like Turkey, like they went and they had a conversation and then they like came back. But then Turkey said, yeah, if there's a fight, we're not going to be in it. Thanks. And Italy's kind of like, they're looking, they're standing by their buddies, but now they're kind of like, right? They're like, Italy, where are you going? Like, we're going to the bathroom and we'll be right back. Promise. All right. So then here's the war. Germany rolls up its sleeves, looks at France, punches Belgium. Everybody got that? Okay. It's called the Schlieffen Plan. There's a reason for that. I mean, literally, like, Germany was so probably decided that somebody was going to throw down at some point that they had already thought about it. Like, what happens if we have to fight France, then Russia, and then maybe Britain too? And they literally said, well, we can't go through the Alps. It'll take too long. We got to violate Belgium's neutrality in order to get France out of the war fast enough before the British start to mobilize. And then we could end the war in France. And then we know that Russia's going to be slow to mobilize. So then once the war in France is over, we can then relieve our JV team that's fighting Russia. And that's basically how they decided to do it. Okay, so Germany rolls up its sleeves, looks at France, punches Belgium. France and Britain punch Germany. Austria punches Russia. Germany punches Britain and France with one hand and Russia with the other. Remember, two-front war. Okay? Russia throws a punch at Germany but misses and nearly falls over. Japan calls from the other side of the bar and says, we support Britain, and then stays on that side of the bar. Okay? Italy surprises everyone and punches Austria. Remember, their brother. Australia punches Turkey and gets punched back. There are no hard feelings because Britain made Australia do it. That's called the Gallipoli campaign, if anybody's familiar with it. Okay? France gets thrown through a plate glass window, but gets back up and carries on fighting. Russia gets thrown through another one, gets knocked out, suffers brain damage, and wakes up with a complete personality change. That's the Russian Revolution. Italy throws a punch at Austria and misses, but Austria falls over anyway. Italy raises both fists in the air and runs around the room chanting. And then, of course, America waits until Germany's about to fall over from the sustained punching from Britain and France, walks over, smashes it with a bar stool, and then pretends it won the fight all by itself. And then at the end it says, all the chairs are broken, the big mirror over the bar is shattered, Britain, France, and America agree that Germany threw the first punch, so the whole thing's Germany's fault. While Germany is still unconscious, they go through its pockets, steal its wallet, and buy drinks for all their friends. And that, of course, are the reparations payments.
I really want to know who wrote that because they did a good job.
No, I mean, isn't that perfect? Like, if you saw it, kind of how it went down. Stop this now. Did it stop?